All right, hey, it's Edward Stevens with the Stevens Group at Reese Nichols. I'm very excited to talk about this topic. It's a hot topic, negotiating buying a home. In no particular order, what I want to do on this video is just go through some bullet points. I've been doing this 10 years. I've got my broker's license. I've seen a lot of battles. I've won a lot of battles. I've lost some battles. And with the information in this video, hopefully it'll benefit you when you're in the heat of the moment buying a home so that you can save a few bucks and hopefully get the home of your dreams. Okay? So in no particular order, here are some things things you should do when you're negotiating buying a home. Number one, you should write the offer up. You should actually write it. If you're working with a buyer's agent, have your buyer's agent write it up. Too often, buyer's agents want to do an offer like verbally, right? And it's not taken as seriously. And there's really not a guarantee that it ever got to the seller. So if you're trying to negotiate, you want to make sure that your agent actually got it out the door, and you want to make sure that it actually got in front of the seller. You're a lot more protected that way. And also, it's taken more seriously. I have seen many times where a seller says no to something verbally, but then later, when it's put in writing, they have a completely different perspective on it. The reality of seeing it in writing and having the opportunity to actually sign this document and then be done with their house, they're more interested in it at that point. So write up the offer. That's number one. Number two is ask the seller what they want. And if you're working with a buyer's agent, have your buyer's agent ask, what does the seller want? If you know what the seller wants, that's half the battle. It's not always about the price. I've talked about this on many videos. It's not always about the price. Sometimes it's about the terms. Sometimes it's about being able to sell the property without making a bunch of repairs. Sometimes it's about the seller's ability to stay at the property and rent it back for a month or 2 months after closing. Sometimes it's the seller needing flexibility because they're still looking for a home to buy. Right? So if you know what you're looking for going into the negotiation, if you can tailor your offer to what the seller wants, you're far more likely to get what you want out of the negotiation. And don't assume. So you either have your agent ask, or if you're working without a real estate agent and you're working directly with the seller, make sure you ask. Number three is you need to attend inspections. Not all inspectors are created equal. But good inspectors, as well as not so good inspectors, they cover a lot of ground in the house, and there's plenty of opportunities to ask questions. Do not just sit there and rely on a written inspection report a day or 2 or 3 days after the inspection was done and think you're going to be able to absorb all the things that were found at that inspection. You need to be there. You need to ask questions. Why? Why is that important for negotiations? Because you need to know what the hell you're talking about. You need to know when you're asking for something to be fixed, or you're asking for money off the price of the house or whatever, you need to be able to substantiate it. And you're far more likely to be able to substantiate it and back your own beliefs up if you're just very well educated in the situation. You know exactly the problem because you were there and you saw it. You didn't read it in an email somewhere. Okay? So by attending, you get to learn more, you get to be more educated, and you get to come from more of a place of authority when you're trying to negotiate things with the seller after the inspection period is up, after the inspections are all done. Next, you should look for discrepancies in the seller's disclosure when you have your inspection. So you want to use the seller's disclosure that was provided to you. You want to trust it, but verify. I always say trust, but verify. So if they tell you that the age of the roof is 5 years old, your inspector tells you it's 20 years old, right? That discrepancy could be used and probably should be used to try to get money off the house, money off the price of the house, or get a closing cost credit, or maybe to even ask for a roof replacement. So by matching up what's on the seller's disclosure with the reality of the inspection report, you have an opportunity to strike again at inspection and negotiations. So you do want to review and sign the seller's disclosure when you go into the offer, and you want to make sure you include that. And the seller has signed that seller's disclosure also. And then now, after the inspections are over, you want to use that to your advantage. Next, you want to get quotes for the work that came up on the inspection report. Don't guess. You lose credibility when you guess. Negotiations, they're not about lying to people. This is just my opinion. In my opinion, it's about coming from a place of being credible and sticking to the facts. And when you have the facts of what an air conditioner costs, and you have the facts of how old that air conditioner is versus what you were told on the seller's disclosure, right? And you have a fact of the company that can actually install a new air conditioner and when they can get it installed, you're far more likely to be successful negotiating a credit or negotiating a replacement of that air conditioner than if you don't have the information about what a new air conditioner costs, for example. So too many times, sellers and buyers cannot reach an agreement on what to do after inspections or even before inspections because the buyer, you're not proactive in getting quotes for repairs you want to have done and then presenting them to sort of bolster your position. As common as I see it after inspections, it's way more common before inspections. People will walk into a home. You as a buyer, you may walk into a home. You go, oh my God, this house needs $50,000 worth of work. Does it need $50,000 worth of work? Or are you just saying that? Where'd you get that number from? So, and then you even talk yourself out of a house that may be a great house. And so I encourage you to say, okay, it may need $50,000 worth of work. I'm going to bring a contractor out here. I'm going to get a quote. I'm going to attach the quote to my offer. And I found out that it doesn't need $50,000 worth of work. It needs $30,000 worth of work. And based on that, I'm going to ask for $30,000 off the price of the house, right? And you've got justification. Okay? Next, I recommend you lock your interest rate. And this is more of a negotiation with maybe the lender than it is with the seller. But if you don't have your lender watching your interest rates move around all day, every day. And so if nobody's watching that and interest rates change significantly, it could really hurt you when you're buying a house. Interest rates can go up a quarter, an eighth of a point or half a point or whatever over the course of, from the start of your transaction till the end. You don't want to be negotiating this and that, and then your eyes over here, and then behind you, you've missed completely the interest rate, and your payments are going to be way higher now. All your negotiating that you think you're doing is erased. All the money you think you're saving by negotiating is erased because either you didn't tell your lender to lock in your interest rate, or your lender didn't know to lock in your interest rate. And all that means when I'm saying lock in your interest rate, means like your lender just hits the button and stops it. They stop it from being able to move anymore. They freeze it. Okay? So it's not subject to market volatility anymore. Shop for a loan. So if you just took the first pre-approval from the first lender that you got off of the internet and made your offer, you might want to shop for a loan. You might want to take it to a second opinion, because by doing that, you may save more money than all the negotiating you're ever going to do with this seller on this deal. Next, offer to move your closing around. So if it's a vacant home, the seller is probably paying insurance, taxes, and upkeep, utilities, whatever, mowing the grass, whatever. And they want it off their books, most likely. And so if you've got another 3 weeks before closing, after you've done the inspections, you may tell the seller, hey, I know I'm asking for these 4 things, and I know you're probably not willing to give me all 4 things. If you give me all 4 things, I'll go ahead and close 2 weeks early. I'll go ahead and move toward getting everything set up for closing next week, right? So I'm able to shave off some time, and that benefits them indirectly, or I guess directly, because they're going to be able to save some money. And that may be something that you're able to do to close the deal. Next is I don't recommend focusing on a lot of things when you're negotiating with the seller. It sort of diffuses your energy. So for example, don't try to win every single battle. My opinion is that there's certain key things that are important to you, and the more you stick to those things, for example, you have a monthly payment. You know you don't want to exceed a certain monthly payment. Stick to that. Okay? Or you're really, really concerned about that roof. I know there was one transaction I was working in Leawood a few years ago. They were very, very, very concerned about the roof. The roof was the most important thing, right? Yeah, there were other things wrong with the house, but the roof was the main thing. So try to pick those main things. Maybe it's your closing date. Maybe it's your ability to get into the property by a certain date, because maybe you've got your lease is coming due or whatever. So try to grab just a handful, maybe like 2-3 things that are really key, and focus on those, and don't diffuse your energy into every single little thing, because the seller, if you send the seller 10 things that you want, right, in your offer or in your counter offer, or when you're negotiating for inspections, they may come back to you and say, we're not willing to do those 10 things, but we are willing to do these 3 things. And the 3 things they pick are probably not even the 3 things you would have picked. Okay, so try to stick to the key things we talked about. This is really, really, really important. You need to know when you're holding the cards and when you're not holding the cards. You need to know when you've got aces, and you need to know when you've got a 7-2 offsuited. You following me? If you're a poker player, you need to know when you've got the upper hand and when you don't in the negotiation. So sometimes as a buyer, you're holding aces. You've got a lot of money. It's in cash. You can close when you want. You're punching down, which means, like, let's say you've got $500,000 in the bank. You're looking to buy, and you $500,000 liquid to spend on a house. And I've had this happen a lot with buyers. They actually moved down a price range because they didn't like the level of competition, maybe in the $500,000 price range. So they went down to like the $350 price range. And they're able to beat everybody out because everybody else is coming in, oh, I'm going to do a conventional loan, I'm going to do an FHA loan, and then we can just come in over the top and be like, no, we're going to pay cash. We're going to pay 15 more than asking price. We're going to close immediately, right? And in a bidding war with a bunch of buyers for one house, that buyer, the cash buyer in that example, is holding the aces. They're holding the cards. They've got the good hand against everybody else. And that might be you sometimes, but other times it may not be you. For example, you might be holding that 7-2 offsuited. You might be holding a very weak hand. You might be like, I need to move next week. I've got no money saved, so I'm going to do a 0% down loan, and I need the seller to pay closing costs. Okay? Or I need the seller to pay closing costs. I'm able to do an FHA loan, put 3.5% down, and I can't move for 90 days, but I really want to buy this house. You've got some weird situation that you're trying to fit the seller into. Yeah, there's certain sellers that will go for that, but it's not ideal. That's an example of you not holding the cards. You need to know where you stand. Your agent, if your real estate agent is working with you as your buyer's agent, they should help you understand whether you've got a strong hand or a weak hand. It's not for you to figure out. It's for the agent to help interpret that your situation in the context of what's happening in the market. And too often buyers are delusional. You can be delusional and say and think that you have a better hand than you do. Okay? I saw this a few years ago when everybody was taking their house as is, or everybody was buying their houses as is. Not everybody, but a lot of people were. It was the thing to do because there was so much competition on houses. If you weren't willing to do that, you weren't holding the cards. You would lose over and over and over again. Okay? Ditch your real estate agent. If your agent is a dud, and this is no shade to any real estate agent, but sometimes agents get busy. Sometimes agents are new. Sometimes agents are not versed in certain markets, or they take a client, the client's working or buying in an area that's just so far away that they're kind of not becoming a priority anymore to help that client. If your agent's not, doing it for you, you need to ditch them, because it's not great for you to lose your dream house because your agent wasn't on their game. Okay? And that's what happens. You lose your dream house once or twice. You begin to resent your agent. Sometimes the agent could be your friend from church, could be a family member. You don't want to wreck those relationships. So a lot of times if it's not working out, you need to part ways before it starts to get really bad. It's also relevant from the standpoint of negotiating, because if you don't have a good agent negotiating for you, it really doesn't matter. Like all these ideas and things that we're talking about right now, they're irrelevant. Like if you have to pass them through a filter of an agent who doesn't respect you or respect their own profession enough to be able to take those concerns forward and try to get what you want, I can give you all the ideas in the world, but they're lost along the way. Do not miss your closing date. There's a lot of reasons why you could miss your closing date. Do not miss your closing date. Here's why you shouldn't miss your closing date. Number one, you could lose your house. There's no automatic that the seller is going to just extend closing, give you extra 2, 3, 4 days to be able to get your life and get your affairs in order so you can close. So they might put it back on the market and sell it to somebody else. But this is even more important in the context of negotiations. Sometimes these negotiations get brutal. And sometimes you have pushed the seller to the limit. And they are mad at you. They are resentful of you and your offer and your agent, and they hate you. And they're looking for an opportunity for you to trip up. They're waiting. They're waiting and watching. They're watching that contract. So you really need to make sure you are abiding by that contract, and especially closing on time. If you don't close on time, all the negotiations that you had, all the wins you thought you had, yes, I got him to put that water heater in. Yes, I got him to put that roof on. Yes, I got him to pay my closing costs. Yes, I got him to do this and that and bend over backwards and I'm winning and everything. And you miss your closing date and the seller wants to put the screws to you, they will put the screws to you. They don't have to pay your closing costs anymore. They don't have to make those repairs anymore. Sometimes they maybe haven't made those repairs. So it's not a game, it's a contract, and it can get cutthroat at times, especially when you have gone in hard on these negotiations and pushed these people to the limit. So when you push people, like it's a risk. Obviously you want to get all that you can get, but there's a risk. And when you push people, then you do so at your own peril. Next, you need to get a loan worksheet and a loan estimate from your lender. You need to get it before you make your offer, and you need to get it after you get your offer accepted so that there aren't any surprises. All the negotiating and things that you're doing and things that you think you need to do, and I'm going to ask for this, and I'm going to have the seller pay this much in closing costs, that can all be completely flipped upside down once the lender tells you, okay, this is really what you got to pay. This is really what you got to pay. When they slap those numbers down in front of you and they're like, this is what you really got to pay. These are really what your closing costs are. This is really what your monthly payment is. You may have a completely different game plan at that point. And better you get that information early rather than late. Because after they throw those numbers down on the table and you're looking at them, you might be like, I got to get my monthly payment down $150 a month. I'm not going to be able to comfortably afford this place. Or I didn't know I had to pay that much in closing costs. I don't even have that much money. I'm going to need the seller to pay $4,000 in my closing costs or $8,000 in my closing costs or whatever. You need to know that going in. And I see buyers get that information after they get their offer accepted, after they've turned their earnest money deposit in, after they've done their inspections, after they've done their appraisal. And it's reckless. It's bad for everybody in the transaction. But for you, the buyer, you're wasting all this time. You're wasting money. You're wasting your reputation because you won't be taken seriously if you come back to the seller. Oh, actually, I can't afford this place after all. I need all this extra money. Seller's not going to take it seriously. They're probably going to want to cancel. So know what you're talking about. Get it from the lender and get it early. A few more. You need to multiple thread your offers. You need to not get fixated so much on one house that you stop looking at all other houses. So when you're writing an offer and you place the offer and hopefully you've put, maybe your best offer out there, and the seller says, I've got your offer. I'm going to wait to make a decision until 2-3 days from now or whatever. The wrong thing to do is sit there and obsess about it, get mad about it, right? Call your real estate agent 50 times. The right thing to do is to go out and look at other houses. Because if you're interested in other houses, you feel like you've got more options. If you do get a counter offer, you're in a better position to negotiate. Or if you get your offer accepted, you may have that idea in your head. Okay, well, there's other fish in the sea. I'm going to play hardball a little bit more when I do my negotiating after I do my inspections. Okay, if you're so tunnel vision on this one house that you just shut off your whole search and you're sitting there obsessing about it, if you get your offer accepted, it's a scarcity mindset that, again, you're not going to be coming from a place of power when you're negotiating. Next, be agreeable. I think I don't know. I think I'm a good negotiator. I'm not trying to sound arrogant. There are certain things I'm good at. There are certain things I'm not good at. One thing I think I'm good at is negotiating. And one thing I learned that I had to learn in this business is to be agreeable with people and to try to, as much as possible, get a win-win with people. People are smart. The seller that you're going to be dealing with is going to not be an idiot. Most people are smart. They're at least intuitive. They know if you're trying to rip them off. They know if you're coming at them from a place of trying to get something up out of them and not help them and not make a fair deal and not shoot straight. So as much as you can, and I say as much as you can, all the time you should be trying to think about what things can we agree on here. Don't fight battles unnecessarily. If you disagree with the seller about something, if it's not really important to the negotiation, you should let it go. It is not your objective to win every single battle. It is your objective to win the war, and the war is getting the house with those 2 or 3 key things that you've identified before you came into this negotiation. Let the other stuff slide. That's what I mean by being agreeable. Don't look to nitpick. Don't look to anger them unnecessarily. Next is, I think I've got 2 more. Know the seller's situation. So sometimes your buyer's agent will be able to learn certain things about the seller. Or if you're working with the listing agent, or if you're working directly with the seller, you'll pick up certain things that you should remember. The seller may be going through a divorce. Bing. The seller may not know where they want to live yet. They don't have a house picked out yet. Bing. Or the seller is behind on their mortgage payments. Okay? Or the seller doesn't have the money to make repairs. Okay? Or the seller is under contract on another house and they have to get this house under contract soon. Otherwise, the contract on their house they're trying to buy is going to flip, it's going to cancel, and they're going to lose their ability to buy that next house that they want to buy. Right? So like in that initial conversation or pretty early on in dealing on that house, on the home you're trying to buy, you should learn these things about the situation because you can structure your strategy around it. If you know that the seller is under contract on a home, it goes back to what the first thing is we talked about. They're under contract on a home. They need this one sold, right? You might want to structure all your negotiations around the fact that you are going to close, you're going to close soon so that they can get into their next home. And that, because that, you know, that's the lens through which the seller will be looking at the negotiation. Okay. And last, and this is not to sound like self-serving or anything, but you really like for like maybe like 90% of you out there, you should use a buyer's agent. You should use a buyer's agent. And it's not because like, oh, you know, you can't do it well. You can't do a good job if you represent yourself or if you go through the listing agent or if you just go direct to the seller. It's not about that. There's certain efficiencies that have been worked out in this industry because this industry has been going on long enough. Agents, we've got like a good agent knows all the shortcuts in a good way, right? They know how to get you to the front of the line. They know who to call. They know how to push the paperwork. They know how to get it moving forward. They know how to get it popping. They know how to make it happen for you. And it's not their first rodeo. So a good agent that's been doing this 5, 10, 15 plus years or whatever, right? They're going to give you a smooth experience. They're going to be able to basically get you what you want faster and cheaper than if you did it by yourself. You can do it by yourself, but usually a good real estate agent can more than pay for themselves and get it done a lot faster. So that's it. Those are some tips, not all, but those are some tips for buying a home through the negotiations of it, I guess you could say. If you have any additional ones, either you've bought a home before and this is something that's worked for you, or you're an agent or you're a lender, drop a comment. I'm really interested to know what's working for you. And then obviously I want to share it with everybody else too, right? If what's working for you, maybe it'll work for me and my clients or somebody else that's watching this. It's Edward Stevens with the Stevens Group at